Well, thank you, Ali, once again. Paklaunch is an amazing, amazing community. I've been part of it for several years now, and been to a few events, not as many as I should have. But thank you for putting this amazing, platform and community together. We have somebody exceptional with us here today. My good friend Ahmed Khattak, who is the founder and CEO of US Mobile, and before that, GSM Nation. And he went to Yale. He's from Pakistan originally. But Emma, do you want to say a few words? Just quickly introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Ali. Ali has been a great friend of mine. Every entrepreneur at some point struggles and has this existential crisis where they're going bankrupt every weekend. And when something like that happens, you need friends like Ali, and I mean it. He was supportive when I was down and I needed emotional help. Always was ready to host me at his house or take my phone call. And then eventually ended up investing in US Mobile as well, which I'm so thrilled about because the company really blew up after I did that round. And so it's really gratifying for me. It's like friends always invest in other friends' companies, and you always, like 95% of the times, expect that you're basically writing that money off. So it's really gratifying that every now and then you're able to go and make it a blowout for them as well. So Ali, thank you so much for that. So a bit about me. My name is Ahmed Khattak. I grew up in Pakistan. I'm originally from KPK, so as my last name suggests. My parents are from a place called Karak, which is like 100 kilometers away from like South Waziristan. So I'm ethnically Pashtun. My dad was in the Pakistan Air Force, which meant that I never stayed at a single city for more than a year or two. So I've changed 10 schools, 10 to 13 schools in my life. I've been everywhere from Quetta to, obscure places. But then since dad was a fighter pilot, he was stationed outside Pakistan for a couple of years. So I've lived in Iraq for a couple of years. I've lived in France, and basically just traveled around the world. Came to the US in 2004. I did my undergrad at Yale. I studied electrical engineering and history, which sounds really paradoxical, right? I mean, both the majors are very different from each other. One I did because I was Pakistani, so I didn't want my parents to cut me off. The other one I liked. But I think it's one of the best things I could have done in my life. And the reason for that is that it's really funny. One of my majors, like electrical engineering, helped me or taught me how to break things into logical systems. And the other taught me how humans have been breaking those same systems for centuries. Um, and then graduated. I was actually originally class of 2008, but I took a year off and graduated in 2009 because I spent a year in the UK working as a system controls engineer. And I was also a professional squash player. I played for Pakistan. I played for Yale, and I spent a year playing professional squash in Europe as well, and coming back and graduating in 2009.
Can you coach my kids, Ahmed? Squash.
Absolutely.
They will. I hear it's also a good way to get. It looks good on college applications,
Apparently, it
right?
is a very good way to get into college for sure. I mean, it helped work
Yeah.
for me.
That's amazing. That's amazing. What was that experience like growing up? Geez, 13 different schools, multiple countries, always moving every year, every couple of years.
Um, it was great. There's a part of your life where you're like, okay, fine, you go and meet a bunch of friends who've kind of lived in the same city for a decade, and they have all of these friends that have existed since their childhood. So, like, obviously you miss out on that, and you miss out on that sense of community. But on the other hand, it just makes you so flexible. Hey, so flexible. It makes you open to different cultures, different people. And by the way, what's really interesting about Pakistan, right, is that it's like we have four different provinces, obviously, and culturally, like everyone from that different province is so different, right? I mean, my wife's from Karachi, I'm from KPK, so obviously my growing up, we spoke Pashto in my house, and obviously my wife spoke Urdu, and like culturally we were so different from each other. And so what you really realize moving around Pakistan as well is that that like even within Pakistan, like you have these like really huge cultural nuances. But it was great. It makes you open. It really makes you open minded. Gives you this ability to kind of think about life and rationalize stuff based on others' opinions. And I think it played a very big part in me getting to where I am today.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, people say that it's a formative experience. It brings you closer to family. It comes with its own set of challenges. So you're at Yale. What prompted you to start your own business?
So it was a mixture of a couple of things. Uh, didn't you um, didn't you start Peanut Labs around 2008 or 9 as well? So around the same time?
I did, yes,
You did,
yes.
right? So I mean,
And
this
it
is
was yeah, around the same time, yeah.
so,
I think it was
so
like
it's like
06,
financial.
07, but yeah.
Okay. So a year or two later, basically you get into one of the worst financial crises in the world, right? And so basically there are no jobs. You're on a student visa. No one is giving you a job. So like it was a mixture of me really being annoyed at how bad cell phone service in the US was, and like how you couldn't just get like imagine it was like a bit of rage in so many ways. Like you're talking about waiting 63 minutes on a call to like port out and then someone hanging up on you, and the fact that really that was the only option at that time, because like really no one was hiring. So like cue to everyone, these like when you get into these situations, sometimes this is when like some of the best companies come out of. Like 2009-10 is when Uber, Airbnb were also kind of founded. And I just felt very strongly um, about fixing the telco issue, and then and there was this. It's a very antiquated industry, so it was a systems um, issue for me. Like my worldview is that I look at companies, software, families as, hey, what's the architecture over here? What are the dependencies? What can be decoupled? Like even like my kitchen drawer is like modular, right? Or my like toothbrush and floss are in a separate compartment because they serve different functions and have different failures. So, so I think that mindset was very foundational for me.
Love it, love it. Okay, so first GSM Nation, and then US Mobile. Can you talk us through what that experience was like, sort of the high points and low points of GSM Nation, and then we'll get into US Mobile.
Yeah. So, GSM Nation was kind of, I would say, a precursor to US Mobile, which is when I graduated, what I really wanted to do was launch my own carrier. But this is this kid who is totally broke out of Pakistan on a OPT F1 visa, and has no idea how to go and launch a carrier, right? I mean, it's the
It's
carrier
a big
market is
deal, huge deal, yeah.
yeah. So and so I settled on something that was probably like a foundation to that, which was there was a problem that probably was a bit easy, like more easy to solve, which was uh, bunch of people were going and buying these phones directly from the wireless carriers, and like kind of getting them for free in exchange for like signing 2-3 year contracts that would charge them $150 or $100 a month. What a lot of them did not know was that you could actually go and you could actually go and tell these carriers, hey, my contract has ended. I'm not going to sign a new contract. I'm actually going to keep my own phone or bring like an unlocked phone from outside. And that would give you like this instant, like $30, like $30 discount. So we basically, GSM Nation started as an online marketplace that educated you on what your alternatives were. So basically, are there any other alternative carriers that exist than the big three? And if you're staying with the big three, how do you? We would help you get a new unlocked device. So like really started. We started selling unlocked phones in the US before that was even a category. Today, Apple sells them out of their store. It's one of the biggest categories on Best Buy. It's one of the biggest categories on Amazon. GSM Nation was by a mile the first company that started as a marketplace. So I started that, scaled to 130 million in revenue by 2014. And very quickly realized that I actually didn't want to be in e-commerce. I wanted to own the supply chain. I wanted to own the product, and also realized that there was this massive opportunity in the US in decoupling carriers, just like Stripe had decoupled payments, and just had Venmo had kind of built. Another great example today is like Mercury Bank, right? I mean, it's basically built on someone else's infrastructure, but they basically decoupled payments, they've decoupled multi-tenancy. And so we thought that that's what we could do for telco. And everyone obviously laughed us out of the room, because like no one had dared to disrupt the telco space, which basically pretty much owns everything in the US.
Yeah. And I remember there were some other sort of smaller networks, MVNOs at the time. Like did Virgin also have one? And there were a bunch of others, right?
Yeah.
Was this around the time? And so maybe this is a good hopping off point into US mobile. So you came up with this insight. Um, and what was that transition like, where you're like, I'm just gonna leave this one business and jump into the other? It's time to go all in.
Yeah. So, um, you know, that's how it kind of ended up working out, which is we decoupled some stuff out of GSM Nation, and sold some assets, and like wound some other stuff down. And part of the reason was that it was kind of like a fork in the road, which is like, okay, do I spend another 2 years at GSM Nation and sell the company at 1.5x or 2x revenue, and basically let that opportunity of this standing opportunity around the carriers go, or should I? And so the middle ground for us was like, okay, there were some takers for some of the assets, and then we basically sold them off, and then basically ended up starting US Mobile in parallel, while I entirely moved towards US Mobile as we were selling GSM Nation. So that's how so there's like an overlap for a year and a half when we did that. And in terms of like starting point at US Mobile, um, you bring a really good point, which is why we struggled so much to raise money at the start, right? Which is, you had Virgin Mobile, you had Boost Mobile. Actually, one of the worst things that can ever happen to you is when you start a company, that Google starts something entirely similar at the same time, right?
That's right. Google had their own thing. Yeah.
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 So like, as I'm
Yeah.
starting US Mobile and I'm just about to raise money, our first investors was the guys like David Wonderman, and like the TPG's family office was one of my first investors, and obviously these guys had invested $1 billion in Uber and some of these other companies. And just as we are ready to close, having done diligence for 4 months, 5 months, like trying to convince them, like begging, borrowing, to kind of stay afloat. Google Fi launches, and I have that email. It's like, hey, Google Fi just launched. Like, what does that do to you? And obviously, my response to my investors was, Google has spent probably tens of millions of dollars launching a product that's not as great as ours. We've done this with 3 engineers and product managers, and myself. So, what does that say about our ability to execute? So hopefully we were able to convince them. Then they gave us a $4 million check. But that was the challenge, which is like, and obviously an opportunity as well, which is everyone was kind of putting lipstick on a pig, right? And saying, hey, this is
Mhm.
our carrier, and but they're basically, you're renting space from a carrier, and you're basically selling the same exact plan. Our approach was entirely different. Our approach was, what we realized with US Mobile was that um, every layer of telecom, from pricing to support, SIMs, how SIMs got activated, were fundamentally broken. You have these massive incumbents and MVNOs that were optimizing for ARPU and call center deflection, and while actual customer experience was stuck in 2015. At the same time, it was very obvious that companies like Stripe were rebuilding payments, Braintree was rebuilding fintech. Nobody was rebuilding connectivity. Everyone slapped, like a lipstick on the pig and called it a brand. So I just didn't want to start a white label MVNO. I wanted to create a programmable carrier, a modular telecom stack where every layer could be rebuilt uh, to serve a customer better, like eventually to serve machines too, right? US Mobile is not a carrier that sells SIMs. It's a connectivity layer that can be abstracted and reassembled and dynamically in real time. So, and so for the way, the first thing we did was we basically had a really counterintuitive approach. Everyone was selling unlimited plans. Our website said unlimited is not for everyone. And we basically sold you these modular stacks of talk, text, and data. Sure, it was a niche play, but as Peter Thiel says, great companies dominate a niche before they move to adjacent markets. Dominated that niche. We stayed extremely focused. We created tech that no one had ever seen before. So even though 100 talk, text, and data might not seem a lot, and
Expensive,
we gave you
reliable, good coverage. Yeah.
exactly, and we gave you coverage on that network for less than $10, which was an absolute game changer. So I would say, this was not a niche play. This was not a ethnic play or a celebrity play. As you can see, like right now, there's this explosion of MVNOs launching. Everyone from Trump Mobile to like Ryan Reynolds, and this was not that. This was a carrier that was entirely modular and that could scale to pretty much anything's use. You want to have a robot that you want to connect to internet. US Mobile was the play for you, and so we really, that was counterintuitive, and people didn't think it was possible. The tech didn't exist. There was a lot of first principle kind of like thinking around it, and like that's what really made US Mobile into what it is today. And then eventually it culminated with the US Mobile becoming a super carrier. So in the US, when you buy a US Mobile connectivity, you can basically be on any of the three networks, which technically is insanely hard to do. It's had never been done before, but we made it happen. So that's how we evolved, right? Evolved from a small modular carrier to then eventually basically being a mass market carrier that took care of every single use case.
Yeah, and I just want to shout out something you mentioned, Emma, early is the customer experience in the product and Mercury and Stripe. Um, this is something that like really struck me when I was looking at, over the years at US Mobile is if anyone has used Stripe or Mercury, has anyone used those services here in the audience? Raise your hand, drop a note. That kind of user experience is like miles ahead of like a traditional bank, right? And so like let's take an example. Let's say you want to accept credit cards as a merchant, right? That would take days or weeks to sign up with anyone else other than Stripe. If you want to send a wire, God help you, it's like hours and something will get stuck and you'll get a call back. But with Mercury, it's instant. You do it in 30 seconds, like on your phone or your computer. US Mobile really brought that experience to your cell phone, your carrier, your network, right? Nobody else is even close. The fact that you can sign up, request a number, SIM, like change, port, like all of this is instant and online and no in is uh, really exceptional, like really well done.
Thank
And
you.
I'm
And
sure
and that
behind
was
the scenes it's not easy to like work with all these legacy stacks.
but I think that's what made us, and I'm glad that happened, right? If like, listen, if every single webhook worked, and we didn't have to work with asynchronous and synchronous APIs and legacy systems and like queuing systems that don't exist, and like legacy databases, we would have never been able to build this abstraction. Then anyone can do it, right? That's why there's so many debit card fintechs these days, because like that layer someone has flattened it. Like Lithic does a really good job with it, right? I mean, Mercury built its credit card on Lithic. Um, and so since none of that existed is what helped us do this, and just like kind of talking about the complexity of like how hard this is, right? So since we let you share data across all three networks in the US, um, uh, uh, because people use a lot of data in the US, and then you have connected devices. Like we have over 1 billion connected devices in the US, and there are a couple of 100 million cars, and vice versa. Um, the the biggest challenge with with building something like this is that imagine you're in Palo Alto and you're on Verizon, and they have ultra wideband in your area, and then like you're driving to San Francisco, and in the middle your phone kind of jumps between ultra wideband to mid band to low band to high band. Your phone is jumping between all of these frequencies, and every time and you're on a phone call, you're streaming music, you're getting a couple of text messages. Everything is a record, and we have to reconcile that in real time. And by the way, every time you jump between frequencies, that's a new record down to kilobyte. So as it is parsing that, and flattening that, and creating like a modular platform on that is hard. But then it exponentially gets harder when it's happening to all three networks and they have different frequencies. And so like just that layer itself was, and so like it was very audacious to even think about someone creating that. But as some of our carrier partners call us, like geeks who run a wireless network operator, and if you're able to do that, that's when like the real mode comes in, because like it's very hard to replicate that. Mercury is a great example. Everything is modular at Mercury, right? You want to raise money, they tap into 6 different partners. Like they have access to different funds, they have access to companies that will finance your invoices, and it's all and they're the middle layer between them, right? You want to wire money, it takes so long, but guess what? They use TransferWise's like APIs, and the TransferWise as a middleware, right? So they're cheaper, they're more efficient, and creating modular stacks like this is hard. But if you're able to do that in a coherent user interface, it becomes incredibly hard to replicate. The only way you can replicate is to like hire the whole Mercury team and build something on your own, but that would cost you hundreds of billion. Like you literally have to go give people $100 million kind of like pay packages, like what like Meta is doing right now.
It is doing, yeah, crazy world we're in.
Right.
Ahmed, let's talk about some of the hardest challenges in the early days. I remember we spoke, a few years ago, and when you were going through the early days of US mobile fundraising was one of the issues, but other issues as well. As you look back, can you pick one of those life or death moments for the company where it you almost didn't make it, or it was something really, really hard that you had to persevere through?
I would say, I'd spend another 40 minutes talking about it. So like I'll kind of contract that to maybe one or two instances. But I would say the biggest existential crisis for us came in 2019. I remember you probably got a call from me at that time as well. But basically what happened was we were, Verizon is one of our partners. And this company does over $100 billion a year in revenue. They generated, I don't know, $16 billion in just free cash flow last year. Like ridiculous amount of numbers, right? And like huge scale. So they'd given us a deal that was really small because they thought we were doing something really cool. But then what happened was the company wasn't big corporation. Like they're not built to deal with us. So they had this most ridiculous thing around letter of credit. So basically what happens is, since we are renting these like capacity from these networks, they're basically giving us a credit line, right? We're using their network, they'll bill us a month or two later, and then we're paying them back. So to protect themselves, they have something called a letter of credit. And our like initial letter of credit was like $250,000 or $300,000. And so like now 2018, 2019, we're a tweener, we're trying to make stuff work, we're profitable, but the company's revenue is less than $10 million. And they come and they said, hey, you're growing with us. And so our exposure on you is growing as well. So we are going to charge you. You need a bigger letter of credit. And they had the worst way to, like, some really like dumb persons like from 20 years back had come up with this like ridiculous formula, and it was they'd look at your last 3 months of growth, right? Now if you're a small company and you're growing from like and they created like a growth formula by averaging the growth rate for the last 3 months. Now if you're a small company and you're growing from 1,000 customers to 5,000 customers over a month, that's not meaningful, right? Like, I mean, US Mobile is adding close to 65,000 customers a month right now, but it's like 5x growth. They compounded that, then they would multiply that by a factor of 20%, And so the number that they came up with was $750,000, $800,000. Basically, what they said was, you have to give us $3 for every dollar that you make, or we're going to shut you down. Right? A carrier shuts you down, you're dead in the water the very next day. So then I go to my investors and I say, hey, this is the situation we are running into. The investors had this negative visceral reaction to this, because I think they were frustrated that the company wasn't growing the way they wanted it to grow, because they obviously did not understand the technical part of it. They didn't realize why we weren't growing as fast as Mint Mobile and Ryan Reynolds' company. So their reaction was, actually, we're not going to do this, and we need you. They said, and you're not, like, you need to step down as a CEO. Now, the
Oh
challenge
God.
was, yeah, so that's this conversation. Like, this is TPG, right? This is these
Mm-hmm.
guys
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for tens of billions of dollars, and like, they're three of them are like bullying me in a
And
conference
they're the
room. And
only, I mean, they're materially speaking, they're the only investors, right? Everyone else is
they were the
small
only
beans,
material
right?
investor. They owned third of the company, and so, like, now they're like, we want to fire you. And I was kind of ready for it. Obviously, I was taken back a little bit, so I took a paper out, and I said, this is what happens when you don't do LOCs. Here are the MVNOs that have gone bankrupt, and, like, I slammed the paper on the table. Thank God I had, like, a lot of entrepreneurs are just going to get bullied, and that's it. And I said,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, this is what's going to happen. They said, well, we don't it. I don't care. We don't care if you go bankrupt. I said, well, you can't fire me because I have board control. So it was a stalemate. I came back at 4 p.m. from the board meeting, and at 4:30, I got an email from them saying, we are resigning from your board, because they're like, we might sue you, and so all of that stuff. And they were worried that US Mobile was going to go bankrupt on Saturday or Sunday, so then that there would be an issue with the trustee. And so, like, now we are sitting here, the board wants to fire you and sue you, your biggest carrier is bullying you, you've spent 5-6 years building this company, like, given up so much upside in any other thing that you have done, you know um, and and you're like, wait, what the heck just happened, and what do we do? That's where you need really good advisors and friends, and really you realize who your true friends are. So, obviously, I called multiple friends. I called you, a couple of other friends, to kind of figure out what, um, the advice from friends were, do, this is your job, do whatever you can not to die. Then I called someone at Verizon who had left Verizon, and I said, listen, it's $100 billion company. You've never delayed your bill. At big companies, they're scared of even losing $500,000 in revenue, so they're not going to shut you down as long as you keep on paying your bills. The board resigning was one of the best things that ever happened to us. Imagine, I'm stepping in the office on Monday. Verizon hasn't shut me down, um, and I have no board. So now I
And
can do
this
whatever the
annoying
heck
board
I
is
want.
gone. Annoying
Yeah,
board is
and
gone.
it was, and
Okay.
so, like, obviously my two,
Oh,
like, it was,
yeah.
and we doubled our revenue in 8 or 9 months after that. And turned out that actually Verizon was just beating their chest as well, and they didn't really care as long as we paid our.
Mm-hmm.
So they rewarded us with a new deal, and I have no board, and it just fundamentally changed our whole trajectory. So, like, it's like, on Friday you're like, my life is over.
Right,
On
right, right.
Monday you're like, wait, hold on, this is actually really great,
They haven't
right?
shut me down yet. You
Yeah,
don't know
and
Tuesday ko kya hoga, but like, okay, you're
yeah,
still in
and
business. Yeah, yeah.
and I have no board. Um, and so that was really the turning point. Actually, a year after that, I bought them out. As you remember, that's when you guys came in on my cap table. I bought them out when the company was at around $15 million in recurring revenue in May of 2021, and it's been actually exactly 4 years and couple of months since I bought them out, and we're at $200 million in recurring revenue. Um, so
Amazing. Mashallah.
obviously
Mashallah.
a lot of things worked out.
Yeah, we're now this is a good segue. I think just in the interest of time, like we could chat about this for hours. Um, because I think this stuff is not talked about enough. Everyone talks about the successes, right? But that's really only 10-15% of your time as a lived entrepreneur. Like 90% is spent in the trenches, like dealing with like this, right? But it's not talked about. But just in the interest of time, we're going to fast forward here. I want to share something or show something. Um, so US Mobile was 94 on Inc. 5000's list, right, as one of the fastest growing companies. As you mentioned, Emma, congratulations on your recent milestone. You hit 200 million top line and growing super fast. I feel like it was just a few months ago. You pinged me and you're like, "Oh, we just crossed 100." So this is kind
Yeah,
of wild, you know?
took us 10 years. Took us 10 years to
Uh,
get to 100 million in revenue in October of 2024, and it's taken us 9 months to go from 100 to 200 million in revenue.
Unbelievable. 9 months from wow. Reddit as a great channel, as an organic growth channel, right, for what you guys are doing. Can you maybe just talk about that for a couple of minutes as well?
Yeah, I would say this is something, this has been like a big driver for us. So what really happened was, of those of you who don't live in the US, like Reddit has always been considered as the front page of internet, right? Um, and so really what happened was, back in 2020, 2019, a bunch of like tech savvy users started coming and commenting on our subreddit and asking questions, technical questions. And I'd always be going to my support team and asking them to answer those questions. And at one day, I'm like, screw this. They don't know what they're doing. I'm going to start answering questions myself. So I started engaging with users. Now, this is an industry where you wait 70 minutes and someone hangs up on you, right? So imagine
Mhm.
all of a sudden you can actually reach out to the company CEO. What we didn't realize was that Reddit was going to become the default uh, recommendation engine in the US coming out of COVID. All men go on Reddit for all kinds of advice. Most women go to TikTok for all kinds of advice. And
That's right. Yeah.
so like my wife takes her financial and her medical and all kinds of advice, parent advice from TikTok. Take it for what it is. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I started responding. Now the challenge with Reddit is, um, the challenge with Reddit and sharing is that like you have to have an insanely thick skin. I'm sharing this thing, as you folks can see. Over the last 12 months, I've had 18 million views, up 8 million. Um, and a lot of my posts will get hundreds of thousands of views. And so it went from people, it went from me giving advice to people and helping them out to, as more and more like the next generation of customers looking for the new cell phone service and they're going to chat GPT or they're googling. Google started, um, um, uh, you know they started indexing as well. So now
Some of these,
basically,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, we have created a telco where basically if someone is looking for the new telco service, they come by US Mobile, and it's the ultimate expression of social proofing. And that's basically what's made US Mobile go viral, where we are acquiring customers at a tenth of what my competitors are, and it's not slowing down. But one of the biggest things with Reddit is that you have to, um, as you guys can see, I have like 186 DMs. I'll actually respond to a lot of these customers
Are you
myself.
still responding yourself, like for
I
most
am.
of these, right?
I'm
That
still
is
responding.
incredible. That is
I'm
incredible. Yeah.
I'm still responding. Some people will make, and by the way, listen, this is the final frontier where people can say anything to you without people knowing who they are, right? So there can be a lot of vitriol on Reddit as well. So you have to have a really thick skin. But if you have that and you're able to manage these people, this is basically one of the greatest like tools you can have. So people can say, like, some people will say bad stuff to me, some people will say good stuff to me, and you have to respond to them in the same way as well. What do I mean by that? There's a customer who came a couple of months back and said stuff like, well, you guys change your plans way too often. You guys change your plans more than a normal person changes their underwear. And my response was, well, doesn't like a normal person change their underwear once a day, right? And and it's like people are not used to like CEOs respond. Like, obviously, like Elon is the master of this, but I think that's what's created this massive virality. A lot of people are trying to figure this out. Really huge corporations. I spoke to Reddit's director of external communications recently. They said we're the biggest company run Reddit by a mile, subreddit. So I think it's a channel that we've unlocked. but it requires you to have really thick skin, and obviously it's perpetual customer support all the time. And I have to find hours in a week to still respond to customers. It's also a um, a continuous feedback loop. Every feature that we build at this point is just recommended by our
Instant
customers.
feedback, instant feedback. And I will say there's something from a customer's perspective, right? And everyone, please, go check out US Mobile if you haven't. It's for companies where you're able to ping the CEO directly through like a social channel and in a few hours get a response or in a day or so. There's a very special feeling as a customer knowing that you are safe and heard and protected and you trust. So like for Mercury, for example, somebody's wire doesn't go through, they go on Twitter and they ping him out, then he replies, right? And you're doing the same thing on the network carrier side. It's a very special thing to be able to do you can't ping Verizon CEO. You can't even ping their support, and so just want to throw that out there. And Ali, this would actually be if I don't know if Ahmed has time. He's very busy now, but if he's feeling generous in the coming months, having him do a master class on Reddit, I think for your audience and community would actually benefit a lot of entrepreneurs. I know I would love to learn and just listen in, but it takes a lot of nuances and to understand each of these communities and channels. So I think that we could all benefit from having someone who's now running the largest company Reddit subreddit on Reddit.
I'd be happy to answer. I'd be happy to do that for sure.
Um, awesome. Well, thank you, for letting me be on the cap table in a small way. I think this was a phenomenal journey, and I still remember the days you used to call me, "Yaar, nothing is working. Yaar, ye ho raha hai." This was some investors being a like this. All these crazy things are happening, right? And I'm glad you have gone through that phase. It takes a lot of grit and perseverance, and we don't have enough time to cover all of that today. But US Mobile, Alhamdulillah, is crushing it, and I just hope you don't sell the company prematurely and you keep going because you are on a rocket ship. And obviously, it's something that all Pakistanis are proud of now to see people like you and success stories like this. Because all of the other diasporas have this, right? The Indians have their own successes, other groups have their own, and so it's now really a moment of pride. And you are one of those rare unicorn founders now who I think is making all of us proud. So keep doing what you're doing. We can open it up for questions here. Some really good questions. Ahmed, if you want to start with one of these questions, feel free to, but I can pick one.
You're
Um,
welcome.
okay. Some of these you've already answered. What drove hypergrowth? Um, what was the most counterintuitive decision you made at US Mobile that turned out to be a game changer?
Um, Letting people buy um, um, talk, text, and data in down to minutes, or like minuscule number like minutes, or 100 minutes or 1 minute or zero, as opposed to unlimited. It was literally the opposite of what the whole industry was doing. So now, and by the way, like, listen, not like people shouldn't do stuff just because it's counterintuitive, because that can also kind of burn your house down. Um, but sometimes you have this kind of conviction around having spoken. Like, I was living a real experience, right? I was impacted by paying $50 a month. I could have just called my parents through WhatsApp. I just needed to stay connected, but I couldn't afford to pay $50. So I would say, for me, just as the whole business model itself was entirely counterintuitive. It was the opposite of what the industry was doing. So I would say um, that was it. I do want to answer one question. It's something that I've been kind of thinking about in terms of, as US Mobile has a couple of hundred people who are working in Pakistan. My team here in the US, have some really great people as well. It says, what do you think about Pakistani startup ecosystems lacks today, and how can it evolve? And I would say, um, uh, uh, the there's a serious lack of maturity in terms of how you look at great businesses. There was this massive influx of funding in Pakistan over the last couple of years, and then like so many of those startups, like you had startups that hit scale like I'd never seen before, like Dawai.com or Airlift or some of these things. Like listen, Airlift left a really huge gap in Pakistan, and I would say the two big reasons were entrepreneurs wanted to become rich the next day. So like that doesn't necessarily work. But in general, I would say the biggest issue with Pakistani entrepreneurs and generally like anyone who's in the Pakistani entrepreneurship diaspora is we are taught in Pakistan that it's a zero sum game. We are taught कि ये नौकरी सिर्फ या इसको मिलेगी या सिर्फ मुझे मिलेगी. We are taught कि इस मेडिकल स्कूल में सिर्फ ये बच्चा जाएगा या ये जाएगा. And because everything is a zero sum game, right? It entirely destroys collaboration. Whereas that's the biggest difference in the US, where everyone looks at an opportunity and say, this is not a zero sum game. We're going to work together, and we're going to make the size of the pie bigger. There is serious lack of foresight in it. We've had situations where people will jump around a lot, and then after 4 years they're kind of coming back, kind of having been stuck in that whole circle of मैं इस company से इस company जाऊंगा or जाऊंगी. And so I would say there just needs to be that fundamental change in terms of like how we look at opportunities, and we have to look at opportunities 5 or 10 years out and like not 2 years out.
That's a good point. Thank you. Um, US mobile, especially I guess now that you're on multiple carriers, you're switching between them, right? Which is incredible technical feat. US mobile, the questions is entered a telecom market dominated by giants. What hard trade-offs did you have to make between speed and perfection in launching your product? And I guess related to this, like the operational challenges in doing something like this.
I would say the biggest trade-off that we made was unit economics, right? Like the biggest trade-off we had to make in the beginning was that at some point you realize your product, people love your product, right? The NPS score is in the 70s. You're on Reddit and like there's all of that stuff. But then there's a competitor that comes in, or like with us, like our own carriers, flanker brands came in, tried to undercut us, and now their unit economics is entirely different than ours, right? I mean, we are paying by the gig, and these guys are not paying anything. Um, and 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 at that point the trade-off was that, okay, do we lose our margin and fundamentally change our like unit economics and then go and compete with them, or do we stick to our guns and really create a product that people love, even if it means we're going to get half the users at what we should be getting in that time, because it all regresses to mean eventually. And that's what happened eventually, because we grew into, like, one of my really good friends, Ahmed Khattak, he's actually also an investor. He sold Square Trade to Allstate for $1.3 billion, a Pakistani entrepreneur. And he said, I once emailed him, I said, hey, this is what's happening. He said, Ahmed, as long as you're growing in a linear manner, it'll compound. See, that advice in itself is counterintuitive. What would like a Silicon Valley investor give you? Start burning money, doesn't matter. Let's go for exponential growth. We'll raise more money. And I would say that was a big trade. Like growth was a big trade-off. Almost got me fired from my last investors. Thankfully, we fired them. And now exponential growth is there. So I would say that takes a lot of cojones from entrepreneurs to go in your boardroom and say, this is what we're going to prioritize. I will say most investors, even if they don't like what you said, will be okay with sustainable growth. It's just that a lot of entrepreneurs just don't have the courage to go and say that to their. So I would say the biggest trade-off for us was that there was a period of 3 years where we stuck to our guns and focused on when the market pressures increased and people were trying to undercut us. We did not follow that and ended up creating a generational company out of that.
Someone building a tech company from Pakistan, right? There's some Pakistani entrepreneurs who are building in Pakistan here. Um, and you talked about sort of a growth mindset earlier. Um, how should I often hear concerns about scalability, challenges, lack of talent. Is it feasible for founders based in Pakistan to raise from the US? How do they access global markets? How do they build for the rest of the world? I'm kind of paraphrasing two, three questions here
Yeah, yeah,
together.
yeah. So I would say that's where the issue is, which is I'm actually been an investor in one of two companies that did well in Pakistan, but then they tried to expand outside and they basically ended up going bankrupt, right? It's a story that we see all the time. Pakistan doesn't scale. We're going to go to Saudi Arabia. We're going to like really what scales, right? Users scale at the end of the day, right? I mean, if you're going to say that, well, we can't build a really big startup in Pakistan because we're not going to make enough money out of them. Well, wasn't that literally Facebook's whole idea? Facebook's whole idea was that we're going to make $0 out of these people, but we're going to hit scale. We're going to hit 300. And I would say that is like, I see this nonstop all the time. Um, and part of it is that we are just all thinking about raising funding. Listen, Pakistan's cost of labor is considerably cheaper than anywhere else out there. You don't necessarily need to raise a lot of money. I invested in a company where all the founder obsessed for the first 3 years was raising money, tagging his other people in a LinkedIn post, teaching them something which is like ridiculous. And so like, is Pakistan a big enough market? Dude, like what, 200 million people? It's like one of the biggest markets uh, you know
Fifth
in
most
the
populous country. Yeah.
world, right, right.
Yeah.
And so I would say you just build startups different in Pakistan. In Pakistan, when you build a company, you have to start thinking about profitability from day one. And when you do that, eventually the investors will come chasing you. The challenge is that a you and the great thing about Pakistan is people are like very open-minded compared to here, where like changing cell phone services is like life or death for them, right? Or changing going from Walgreens to CVS is life or death. Um, and so I think in that context, you obviously have to solve a problem. You have to for Pakistan, I would say you have to create painkillers and not vitamins, right? Like Pakistan is just fundamentally that market. But also you have to start thinking about scalability and sustainability. Like I'm still surprised that there's no one who came in and like really took over. Like sure, there's other companies that are doing these 15-minute groceries, but like no one has been able to come in and solve for what the space, the white space that airlift left, right? And so like entrepreneurs can take that position and say, wait, hold on, no, that's really high capital orientation. The guys burned $50 million. Like literally, they're on Hall of Fame for American startups. Like that's how much American startups burn in a
Yeah.
year sometimes, right? But you could really focus on one city or two
Hmm.
cities. And I would say that's how Pakistani entrepreneurs, like they will, it's all about being like, remember, at the end of the day, US Mobile started with an insanely small niche. We are, our case for US Mobile is that we hit 500 million in revenue in the next 18 months or so, right? And like how many companies are out there that, but it took us 10 years to get here. In the,
Overnight success.
so
Just 10 years, yeah.
So I would say like my biggest advice to like entrepreneurs in Pakistan is obviously build something that a lot of people will use and you'll be able to find that. But more importantly, do not optimize. Assume that you will never get funding. And I think that gets you like that's just what the dynamic of the Pakistani startup. Like Dawai itself was insane. Like it was one of the like I was a huge fan. Like when I saw Dawai.com, I own edrop.com, a domain name that I've owned for years. And I told my co-founder, I said, hey, I've always wanted to create an on-demand pharmacy in the US. This is so great. They hit such massive scale and then just everything just capitulated. And part of it was because they were all depending on someone else to come and give them the $20 million, right? So I would
Mm,
say
mm,
that
mm.
mindset has to change a little bit.
Yep, yep. For US Mobile, one of the questions is tell us about your customer base. I assume it's, all US, mostly US. And how do you think about future expansion? Is it more categories, more business? I know business is a significant part of the business. Is it more countries? Will you, go to Canada or other markets?
So US Mobile has interconnectivity with close to 350 wireless networks in the world. Like obviously, because some countries will have multiple networks, so actually close to 400 networks. So we have that for roaming, and we obviously have the ability to go and expand. But we are super focused on the US. And why? And by the way, this is a question that's been asked multiple times. Some investors have offered back in the day, like, we're not looking for any money anymore, but hey, we'll invest if you go and like expand to 5 different countries, right? I mean, the
Just in the
TAM.
US. You're
Yeah,
saying just in the
yeah,
US. Okay.
yeah.
Because
The
the
TAM,
market is just so huge
it's
that
massive,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so we have kept that in mind. Like most of my competitors went bankrupt because they tried to expand to credit cards and TV and this and that. Fintechs are trying to come into the MVNO space, um, and that's because they obviously don't realize or don't believe the market is that big. For us, that's how huge the market is, and we're going to stay super super focused on creating the best. It's very much like if you ask Imaz, like, hey, are you going to expand? Like, I mean, we could really use Mercury Bank in 5 different countries. He's like, dude, like, I don't have a very big market share, and I'm still valued at such a big a number. So I would say similar with US. We're going to stay super focused. Our next goal is to get to 3 million customers, which would basically 3x our customer base. And we want to get there in the next 12 or 18 months. That in itself creates massive amounts of operational and technical challenges, like extending our network operations center, customer support. You know what happens when your user base, the stakes are higher. So I would say that's what we are super focused on right now.
Amazing, amazing. Um, we have maybe time for one more quick question here. Do you want to pick a favorite, Emmett, from this list? Anything we haven't
Uh,
talked about?
um, I'll I'm going to answer um, um, a loaded question with a very simple answer. It's US Mobile ranked 94 on Inc. 5000 in 2019. What drove that hyper growth? Uh, Customer love and obsession, um, hands down, like nothing else. You know, Elon has his shenanigans and he does these interesting, but Tesla is still growing a lot, and part of it is that he loved his customers, or he still loves his customers, and he wants to build something that people love. And I would say that is what's grown. Like the growth in this Inc. 94, like when we were 94, that growth was not nearly as like that. We went from, I don't know, $500,000 in revenue to like 9 million. We're growing way faster than that today. And it's because of this obsession with customers. You folks are welcome to go to my subreddit and see my responses. Actually, um, a couple of weeks back, I went on my subreddit and I posted a picture of my family um, after Eid, and they were like, "Wait, what? You went and posted, a picture of your family after Eid?" And like I'm saying, like that's the kind of, you know, and obviously, so this I'm going to share this. So this is a picture, um, and
Oh,
this
adorable.
is Reddit. Yeah, this is Reddit. Um, this is a Pakistani-American founder of one of the fastest growing
Mm,
telcos. Like we work with all kinds of orgs, right? Everyone from end users to law enforcement agencies. Um, and I say customer love, like it's the greatest equalizer that you'll ever have. It is that equalizer that keeps your partners in check, your investors in check. Um, and I would say, so like customer love is uh, something that's been, I would say that's my advice. That's what gets hyper growth for everyone.
amazing, amazing. And it takes, especially on Reddit, sharing that takes extra courage. This is the kind of forum Reddit is. Um, well, thank you, Ahmed. I think this was um, this was extra special, and you were very generous with your time, and obviously your accomplishments speak for themselves. And it takes a special kind of, you think in systems. It takes a guy who's organized his kitchen cabinet and his bathroom cabinet with the floss is different from the toothbrush to build a company this complex and have it grow this quickly and still find enough time to respond to every single customer directly at the scale. I mean, this is even for me, when I think about this, I'm like, oh, just let somebody else just respond, to customers or like hire some people to deal with it. But the fact that you're doing it at scale and responding to customers at scale is very inspiring, honestly. And I think more of us can do it, but also you're supporting the Pakistani community and diaspora and giving back. And I think this is how we raise all boats. Rising tide raise all boats is uh, we help each other and we don't make it transactional, right? Where like okay, what's in it for me or like type of thing, but just giving back in good karma and knowing that good karma comes around to you. Um, this is very common in tech, so I'm glad. Thank you, Ahmed, for sharing this, sharing your time, your expertise, your advice with the group. And Ali, thank you for helping put this together. One quick thing, actually, subscription-based businesses. How can we contact you both? Ahmed, what is a good way for people to follow
Just
you, stay in touch with you?
find me on LinkedIn, send me a message, add me there, or my email is my last name at usmobile.com. So, or Reddit,
Okay.
you know,
Is Reddit going to be the fastest reply?
if you're not a customer, probably not.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah, just add me on LinkedIn, send me a message or send me an email, and I'll get back to you folks.
Yeah. Um, Ahmed, I saw, and just sort of a parting thought, I was looking at this interview from another podcast where the CEO of Brex, somebody was interviewing him and he's like, uh, he was talking about a chat he had with Paul Graham. I think Brex was a YC company or is a YC company. And he asked Paul, okay, we've hit like so many hundreds of millions of revenue, or like what should I be focusing, what should I be worried about, right? And PG told him something that I think would love to leave with you as a parting thought is um, PG said, find a way to stay happy personally. Because the Brex CEO, and I think you're also at that stage now where uh, founder burnout, getting pissed off at like all the different sorts of challenges that come with a growing team, right? Particularly culture, team, growing company. It's very easy for the founder to get pissed off and burn out. So do whatever you can to stay happy so that you stay in the game. And
I, I would just reiterate what you're saying, and 100%. The one thing I've been telling a lot of people, and this is like before I leave today, is that um, I have um, I have like developed a lot of serious appreciation for people who know how to live with less but are happy as well. And obviously I'm mission driven, and there's benefits of creating a company that's really worth like significantly north of $1 billion today. Um, but that's not a source of happiness, right? I mean, and so like in that context, I have really over the years appreciated friends of mine who just basically took this route of 9 to 5 at Microsoft or Google and are insanely happy as well. So I would say like I would like double thumbs up what you just said right now, which is happiness is it can be found anywhere, and you don't need a lot of success or money to be happy in life.
yep, yep. Thank you for highlighting. Um, yeah, just stay happy, man. Whatever you're doing. And I think we have spoken about burnout a few times and maybe taking some time off, spending time with family. I know you're very sort of down to earth guy in general. but stay in the fight, man. You're doing great. And thank you for giving back. I think this was amazing. Um, Ali, do you have any last thoughts to share?
No, nothing at all. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. Loved
Thank
it.
you, guys. Appreciate it. And all of you have
Awesome.
a great weekend. And Ali, I'll text you on the side. Hope to run into you somewhere. It's been a while since we met.
Yes, yes. I will make it a point to fly out there next few months at some point and come say hi. And I'm actually writing a book about all of the pivoting I've done over my startup. So I'm going to ask you to write a piece for the forward.
You got it.
It's
Thank you.
coming out sort of end of the year.
I know I owe you that one, so I'll try to get on it.
Awesome. No rush. Yeah, yeah, no rush. It's we have time. But thank
Cool.
you,
Thank you.
everyone. Thanks to everyone joined. Thank you for your questions, and especially thank you, Ali, for the community platform, and Emma, most of all. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day. Allah
Take
Hafiz.
care. Bye.